With her striking red hair, piercing green eyes, and natural elegance, Maureen O'Hara seemed destined for Hollywood greatness. Dubbed the Queen of Technicolor, she became one of the most recognizable stars of classic cinema, embodying both fiery passion and timeless grace. But behind the dazzling images projected onto the silver screen, her journey was anything but effortless. From secret marriages and personal heartbreak to professional clashes and industry struggles, O'Hara faced challenges at every turn. Yet, the determined Irish actress never backed down, proving time and time again that she was more than just a pretty face, she was a force to be reckoned with. Before she became an icon of old Hollywood, she was simply Maureen Fitzsimmons, a young girl growing up in a lively, unconventional household in 1920s Dublin. One of 6 children, she thrived in a home filled with laughter, chaos, and boundless imagination. O'Hara later recalled, "We were the most remarkable and eccentric family I could have possibly hoped for." And she wasn't exaggerating. Her father was a successful businessman and part owner of the renowned Shamrock Rovers football team, while her mother had once been a skilled operatic contralto, ensuring that the Fitzsimmons home was always filled with music and ambition. That eccentricity extended beyond her immediate family. When she was just 5 years old, an unusual guest visited their home, a woman who claimed she could predict the future. For young Maureen, her words were both thrilling and ominous. "One day, you will leave Ireland and become famous all over the world," she told her. But then came the unsettling part, "It will all slip through your fingers one day." No one could have guessed how eerily accurate that prophecy would turn out to be. From an early age, O'Hara displayed an undeniable talent for the arts. At just 14, she was accepted into the prestigious Abbey Theatre in Dublin, where she trained rigorously in acting, voice, and movement. Over the next 3 years, she dedicated herself to honing her craft, gradually earning small stage roles. Eventually, she landed her first major leading role, an opportunity she had worked tirelessly to achieve. But just as her stage career was beginning to flourish, fate intervened in the form of an unexpected visitor. American entertainer Harry Richman, convinced that O'Hara's beauty and presence belonged on the big screen, traveled to Dublin to find her. His timing was abrupt. He appeared while she was having dinner with her parents, eager to discuss an opportunity that would change her life forever. Richman insisted she take a screen test, pressuring her to consider a future in film rather than theater. The idea of abandoning the stage, her first love, was unsettling, but ultimately, O'Hara decided to see where this new path might lead. Despite her willingness to try, her first experience in front of the camera was a disaster. The moment she arrived at the studio, makeup artists transformed her natural beauty into something artificial and exaggerated. They draped her in a gaudy gold lame dress, caked her face with heavy makeup, and styled her hair in an overdone, elaborate fashion that made her look twice her age. The result was completely unnatural, and as soon as the cameras started rolling, O'Hara felt out of place, uncomfortable, and deeply insecure. She left the screen test convinced that she had made a terrible mistake, regretting ever leaving the Abbey Theatre. But just when it seemed like her Hollywood dream had ended before it even began, an unexpected supporter came to her rescue. English actor Charles Laughton happened to see her screen test and was immediately captivated, not by the garish makeover forced upon her, but by the raw talent and expressive presence hiding beneath it. Recognizing her potential, he made an offer that would alter the course of her life, a valuable film contract that would launch her into the movie industry. As Maureen O'Hara's career gained momentum, so did her personal life, though not always in the ways she had hoped. While filming her breakout role in Alfred Hitchcock's Jamaica Inn, she caught the attention of British producer George H. Brown. He was completely smitten with her, but O'Hara didn't feel the same intensity toward him. Unfortunately, Brown refused to take the hint. When O'Hara told him she would soon be leaving for Hollywood to star in The Hunchback of Notre Dame, he became desperate to keep her by his side, and what he did next took things to an unsettling level. The day before O'Hara was set to depart for America, Brown bombarded her with frantic phone calls, begging her to see him one last time. Wanting to avoid unnecessary drama, she reluctantly agreed. But when she arrived, she realized too late that he had something else in mind. Instead of a simple farewell, Brown had arranged a surprise wedding. Caught off guard and unable to process what was happening, the 19-year-old O'Hara went through with the ceremony. Looking back, she would deeply regret her decision. When she arrived in Hollywood, O'Hara hoped to put the situation behind her, but Brown had other plans. Instead of keeping their marriage quiet, he proudly announced to the press that he was married to Ireland's rising star. His public declaration quickly turned into a PR disaster. O'Hara's Hollywood bosses were furious. They had been grooming her as a young, single leading lady, and a surprise marriage didn't fit into their carefully crafted image of her. Stunned by the backlash and feeling trapped in a situation she never wanted, O'Hara soon realized there was only one way out. Following the studio's orders, and her own growing frustration, O'Hara made a bold decision. While Brown waited for her to return to Ireland, expecting his new wife to come back to him, she stayed in Hollywood. Without telling him, she quietly had the marriage annulled. She never saw or spoke to Brown again. For someone so desperate to hold on to her, he became nothing more than a forgotten chapter in her life. Before The Hunchback of Notre Dame even hit theaters, Hollywood was already buzzing about Maureen O'Hara's big-screen debut. She couldn't quite understand the hype and worried that audiences would see her as nothing more than a passing novelty. Deep down, she feared she wouldn't have the staying power to build a real career. But she couldn't have been more wrong. The film became a major success, solidifying her place in Hollywood. Unfortunately, just as her career was taking off, darker days were ahead. At the time, O'Hara was under contract with Charles Laughton's film company, and she considered him both a mentor and a trusted friend. But when World War II broke out, sending the entertainment industry into chaos, everything changed. With the war disrupting film production, Laughton and O'Hara were supposed to return to London together. Instead, he blindsided her with an act of betrayal she never saw coming. Desperate for money, Laughton sold O'Hara's contract to RKO Pictures without warning. It wasn't just a professional setback, it was a personal blow that left her feeling utterly abandoned. She had trusted Laughton, believing he had her best interests at heart, but he had treated her like a business transaction. Even worse, the deal forced her to remain in Hollywood, separated from her family in Ireland. Years later, she admitted that Laughton's decision left her feeling completely alone. But her troubles at RKO were just beginning. One of her first projects under the new contract was A Bill of Divorcement, a remake of a well-known film. On paper, it seemed like a promising opportunity, but in reality, it turned into a nightmare, thanks to the film's director, John Farrow. Instead of focusing on his job, Farrow became disturbingly fixated on O'Hara. His behavior quickly crossed professional boundaries, and he began stalking and harassing her. And if that wasn't enough, his personal life made things even more twisted. He was married to another Irish actress, Maureen O'Sullivan, at the time. O'Hara had no interest in playing along with his advances and made it clear that she wasn't interested. But instead of backing off, Farrow reacted with cruelty. When rejection bruised his ego, he retaliated by making her life on set unbearable, belittling and tormenting her whenever he could. Eventually, she had enough. One day, when he pushed her too far, she turned around and punched him square in the jaw. That was all it took. After that, he finally left her alone. If there was one thing Maureen O'Hara wouldn't tolerate, it was being bullied. O'Hara's early years in Hollywood were riddled with frustration. She found herself stuck in films with lackluster scripts, uninspired direction, or both. Disheartened and increasingly convinced that she had made the wrong choice in leaving Ireland, she began contemplating abandoning her contract altogether and returning home. But before making such a drastic decision, she made one final plea to her agent. She wanted a role in How Green Was My Valley, the next film from acclaimed director John Ford. To her relief, she landed the part, a role that would become one of the defining moments of her career. However, what seemed like a dream opportunity soon turned into something far more complicated. Ford and O'Hara went on to collaborate on 5 films over the next 2 decades, but their working relationship was tainted by something troubling. Ford was fixated on her in a way that went beyond professional admiration. Though O'Hara never reciprocated his feelings, he couldn't accept her rejection. His behavior fluctuated between obsessive infatuation and cruel hostility, making their dynamic deeply unsettling. When Ford wasn't directing her on set, he was writing her impassioned, drunken letters, confessing his longing. In one letter, he admitted, "God, I long for you. I dream of you. Your face is constantly in my dreams." But his obsession wasn't always expressed through words. He could also be violent. At one point, he even punched O'Hara in the face while they were on a movie set, humiliating her in front of the cast and crew. It was a shocking display of aggression, but in Hollywood's golden age, powerful directors often operated without consequence. Unfortunately, Ford wasn't the only man in the industry who overstepped boundaries with O'Hara. In her early days in Hollywood, when she was still adjusting to life in a foreign country and feeling isolated, she grew close to director William Houston Price. Unlike Ford, Price didn't physically intimidate her, but like so many others, he developed romantic feelings for her. Not long after her annulment from her first marriage, Price proposed. Feeling vulnerable and unsure of herself, O'Hara agreed, though her heart wasn't truly in it. Looking back, she realized she had accepted out of loneliness rather than love, and once again, she found herself in a marriage she would come to regret. A telling sign of her reluctance was the fact that she kept the wedding a secret. As Price made plans for their ceremony in his hometown of Mississippi, O'Hara remained emotionally detached, seemingly in denial about what was happening. She didn't even inform her family about the wedding until just minutes before she was set to walk down the aisle. If that last-minute phone call came as a shock to them, what happened next would be even more surprising. What should have been a joyful honeymoon period quickly turned into a nightmare for Maureen O'Hara. In the days following her wedding, she realized that she had made a terrible mistake. Her new husband, William Houston Price, was not the man she had believed him to be. He was a heavy drinker and a compulsive liar, traits that became impossible to ignore once they were married. O'Hara felt trapped. As a rising Hollywood star, she knew that getting a divorce so soon after her wedding could damage her reputation. Despite her strong-willed nature, she felt she had no choice but to endure the humiliation of a failing marriage. But things were about to get even worse. In early 1942, just as she was preparing to work with Tyrone Power on a new film, misfortune struck. O'Hara fell seriously ill and was diagnosed with both appendicitis and painful ovarian cysts, conditions that required immediate medical attention. Instead of receiving sympathy, she was met with shocking cruelty from producer Darryl Zanuck. Convinced that she was simply trying to get out of work, he dismissed her from the film and replaced her with another actress. But his insensitivity didn't stop there. He went even further, making an outrageous and deeply offensive remark, claiming that O'Hara's health issues were the result of an abortion. For O'Hara, a devout Irish Catholic, the accusation was beyond appalling. She was devastated by the betrayal, but Hollywood was an unforgiving place, and she had no choice but to push forward. Despite these hardships, O'Hara's career soared in the years following World War II. With her striking red hair, emerald green eyes, and porcelain skin, she became the perfect leading lady for the new era of Technicolor filmmaking. The vivid hues of color film made her features stand out in a way that black and white never could, earning her the title, the Queen of Technicolor. But her newfound fame came with a price. The intense, glaring lights used in Technicolor productions caused her excruciating headaches and even led to a rare form of conjunctivitis. Still, O'Hara refused to let the physical pain slow her down. As her star continued to rise, the tabloids took notice, and they were relentless. O'Hara suddenly found herself the subject of salacious rumors. One of the most bizarre came from another actress, who claimed that O'Hara had made a romantic advance toward her in an elevator. O'Hara dismissed the accusation as a desperate attempt to gain publicity, but it was far from the only instance of professional jealousy she encountered. Despite the turmoil in her personal life, O'Hara found immense joy in 1944 when she welcomed her daughter, Bronwyn. Becoming a mother was one of the happiest moments of her life, but even that was tainted by cruelty. At the time, Hollywood placed enormous pressure on actresses to maintain a certain image, and O'Hara became a target of petty jealousy once again. Shortly after giving birth, another actress spitefully told an executive at RKO Pictures that O'Hara had gained too much weight and looked as big as a horse. Shockingly, instead of dismissing the cruel comment, the executive took it seriously and nearly passed over O'Hara for an upcoming role. It was a painful reminder that, no matter how talented she was, she would always be judged by Hollywood's unforgiving standards. After enduring relentless pressure in Hollywood, Maureen O'Hara desperately needed a break. Hoping to escape the stress of her career and her troubled marriage, she returned to Ireland, seeking solace in the familiarity of home. But instead of finding peace, she found herself at the center of a terrifying ordeal. One evening, a car pulled up to her family's home, and the occupants claimed they had come to escort her to an event. The only problem? O'Hara had no recollection of making such plans. Something about their approach felt wrong, too forceful, too insistent. She hesitated, then made a decision that likely saved her life. She refused to go and sent them away. The next day, the shocking truth made headlines in newspapers across Ireland and the United States. Irish report plot to kidnap Miss O'Hara screamed the front pages, revealing that she had narrowly escaped a carefully orchestrated abduction. Authorities later confirmed that there had been a real threat against her, but the motives behind the plot remained unclear. Had someone targeted her for ransom, or was there a more sinister reason? O'Hara never received answers, but the near miss left her shaken. Despite this terrifying experience, Hollywood showed little concern for her safety. She was still under contract with 20th Century Fox, and mere days after the attempted kidnapping, the studio demanded she return to work. They had already scheduled her next project, a Christmas film that, at the time, seemed like just another assignment. Exhausted and still rattled, O'Hara was furious at their insensitivity. But what she didn't yet realize was that this film would become one of the most cherished classics of all time, Miracle on 34th Street. Working on the film turned out to be exactly what she needed. The experience was warm and filled with holiday magic, thanks in part to the wonderful cast. O'Hara developed a special bond with young Natalie Wood, who played her daughter, and she, along with everyone else on set, became convinced that Edmund Gwenn, who portrayed Kris Kringle, really was Santa Claus. Years later, she fondly recalled, "By the time we were halfway through the shoot, we all believed Edmund really was Santa Claus." For O'Hara, it was a rare moment of pure joy in a life that had been filled with so much struggle. But while her professional life was reaching new heights, her personal life was unraveling. Her marriage to William Houston Price had been a decade-long ordeal, but as a devout Catholic, she struggled with the idea of filing for divorce. She was deeply unhappy, yet bound by her beliefs. Eventually, even Price seemed to realize that their marriage was beyond saving. If they were ever going to break free from their miserable union, he would have to be the one to make the decision. And so, in 1951, on what would have been their 10th wedding anniversary, Price filed for divorce and left their home. Just like that, O'Hara's painful chapter with him came to an end. After their divorce, O'Hara put Price behind her, but his life took a tragic turn. Sometime later, she was informed that he had passed away, with his family telling her that he had suffered a heart attack. But the truth was far darker. In reality, Price had returned to Mississippi and taken his own life. His family, unwilling to share the devastating truth, kept it a secret from both O'Hara and their daughter, Bronwyn. Determined to move forward, O'Hara set out on a much-needed trip to Mexico, hoping for a fresh start. What she didn't expect was to return with a new romance. While dining at a restaurant one evening, she met Enrique Parra, a charming and influential politician and banker. Unlike her previous husband, Parra was successful in his own right. He had his own wealth and power and didn't need to rely on O'Hara's status or earnings. He was kind, gentle, and completely different from Price. It seemed like a dream come true, but after everything she had been through, O'Hara wasn't ready to believe in fairy tales. Though she was falling for Parra, her past had made her cautious. She had been deceived before, and she wasn't about to let it happen again. When Parra claimed that he had separated from his wife, O'Hara didn't just take his word for it, she hired a private investigator to follow him and confirm the truth. Whatever the investigator reported must have satisfied her, because she soon grew more deeply involved with Parra. But while their relationship was an improvement from her disastrous marriage, it was far from perfect. During the 1950s, O'Hara also found stability in her career. She became a leading star in adventure films and westerns, often appearing alongside John Wayne. Their on-screen chemistry was undeniable, and audiences couldn't help but wonder if there was something more between them off-screen. O'Hara always insisted that they were nothing more than close friends, but a recent biography of Wayne suggested otherwise. Whether the rumors were true or not, one thing was certain: Maureen O'Hara had finally solidified her place in Hollywood, proving that no matter what hardships she faced in her personal life, her career remained as resilient as ever. The rumors surrounding Maureen O'Hara and John Wayne's relationship have long been a source of speculation. According to a biography about Wayne, the two shared a secret romance that lasted nearly 20 years. The book claims that their relationship began before Wayne's third marriage and continued, off and on, until his death. A source who worked closely with both actors stated that Wayne was truly in love with O'Hara but never proposed to her. The reason? According to the insider, Wayne had a pattern: he only married women he believed he could control, and O'Hara was far too strong-willed for that. While the public saw O'Hara as one of Hollywood's most glamorous stars, behind the scenes, she was constantly navigating battles from her past. She found herself caught between the lingering presence of her domineering former director, John Ford, and her bitter ex-husband, William Price, who was still furious that she had moved on so quickly. Ford took every opportunity to insult her relationship with Enrique Parra, throwing demeaning comments her way. But Price went even further. He took her to court in 1955, trying to gain custody of their daughter by painting O'Hara as an immoral woman. Price may have thought he had the upper hand, but his plan backfired spectacularly. Just before the case went to trial, a mysterious man approached O'Hara, claiming he had evidence that Price was secretly gay. He even offered to testify on her behalf. Though the information could have given her an undeniable advantage, O'Hara was unsettled by the offer and declined. She didn't need any outside help. She was confident she could win the case on her own. After years of enduring Price's emotional abuse and financial betrayal, she had found her strength again. Instead of simply defending herself, she turned the tables and sued him right back. The verdict landed in her favor, but it wouldn't be the last time she found herself in a courtroom. By the mid-1950s, O'Hara was at the peak of her career, and the tabloid magazine Confidential was pushing the limits of scandalous journalism. It was only a matter of time before their paths collided. In 1957, the magazine published a salacious claim that an usher at Grauman's Chinese Theater had caught O'Hara and Enrique Parra engaging in an intimate act during a movie screening. The accusation was both humiliating and completely false. O'Hara was outraged and wasted no time fighting back. She wasn't the only one eager to bring Confidential to justice. At the time, the state had convened a grand jury to investigate the magazine's unethical reporting, and O'Hara was more than willing to testify against them. The magazine's defense team brought in staff from the theater, who swore that the story was true, thinking they had the upper hand. But what they didn't realize was that O'Hara had a game-changing piece of evidence up her sleeve, one that would turn the case in her favor. With that battle behind her, she turned her focus back to her relationship with Enrique Parra. She had invested over a decade into their romance, but sadly, it was not meant to last. Many of her Hollywood peers disapproved of her relationship with a foreign man, and while she ignored their narrow-minded views, a deeper tragedy ultimately drove them apart. In 1967, Parra suffered the devastating loss of his daughter. Overwhelmed by grief, he withdrew from O'Hara, emotionally distancing himself until their relationship quietly faded. After more than 15 years together, it was over, leaving O'Hara heartbroken and alone once again. But love had a way of finding her in the most unexpected places. As it turned out, the man who would become her greatest love had been in her life all along. Back in 1946, when O'Hara had traveled to Ireland, her flight was piloted by a man named Charles F. Blair Jr. Over the years, he became close friends with her brothers, and their paths crossed occasionally. Then, one evening, her brother had plans to go out with Blair but had to cancel at the last minute, so he sent Maureen instead. Neither she nor Blair could have predicted just how much that simple change of plans would alter the course of their lives. At the time, both O'Hara and Blair were dealing with recent breakups and leaned on each other as friends. But one night, Blair surprised her with a straightforward, no-nonsense proposal. He told her that he was retiring and that he wanted to marry her. Given her history with whirlwind proposals, O'Hara might have been expected to hesitate. But this time, it felt different. Unlike her past relationships, Blair was stable, kind, and deeply devoted to her. Against the odds, she said yes. For the first time in her life, she had found a love that felt easy and safe. She was happier than she had ever been, but sadly, fate would not allow her happiness to last forever. As the 1960s progressed, O'Hara's career also underwent a transformation. She began shifting into more mature roles, playing maternal figures like the mother in the original The Parent Trap. Unlike many of her Hollywood contemporaries, she didn't chase after younger roles or try to cling to her youthful image. She embraced aging gracefully, but at the same time, she grew increasingly disillusioned with the direction the film industry was taking. The rise of more provocative content in movies deeply unsettled her. While she had always been fearless in standing up to inappropriate behavior from directors and had refused to participate in risque photo shoots, she found herself more and more out of step with the changing Hollywood landscape. With her devotion to her marriage and her growing disinterest in the industry, O'Hara gradually stepped away from the spotlight. By the 1970s, she had all but retired, choosing to focus on her personal life rather than chase after roles in an industry she no longer recognized. She and her husband, Charles F. Blair Jr., ran a small airline in the Virgin Islands, where she also took on the role of editor for a local magazine. She had found happiness outside the limelight, enjoying a life filled with adventure and purpose. But just when everything seemed to be going well, tragedy struck. Blair, an experienced aviator, was piloting a flight when his plane suffered engine failure and crashed between St. Croix and St. Thomas. The accident claimed his life, along with 3 passengers. O'Hara was devastated. Her husband, the man she had finally found true happiness with, was gone in an instant. But as heartbreaking as Blair's death was, the hardships in her life were far from over. In the wake of her husband's passing, O'Hara took on a new role, becoming the CEO and president of their airline, making history as the first woman to lead a scheduled airline in the United States. On the surface, she seemed to be handling the transition with strength, but behind the scenes, she was facing another battle. Doctors diagnosed her with uterine cancer, forcing her to undergo surgery. Though the procedure was a success and she was expected to make a full recovery, just as she was regaining her strength, she received yet another devastating piece of news. Her closest friend, John Wayne, was also fighting cancer, and unlike her, he was losing the battle. Determined to honor him while he was still alive, O'Hara fought tirelessly to ensure he received the recognition he deserved. She campaigned for Congress to award Wayne the Congressional Gold Medal, one of the highest honors a civilian can receive in the United States. Her efforts paid off, and he was given the award before he passed away just a few months later. While she was grateful to have seen her dear friend honored, losing Wayne was another crushing blow. The combined grief of losing both her husband and Wayne left her struggling with depression for years. In 2015, at the age of 95, Maureen O'Hara passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her family remained by her side in her final moments, playing the soundtrack to her favorite film, The Quiet Man, as she drifted away. After a lifetime filled with triumphs, heartbreaks, and untold stories, she left behind a legacy of strength, talent, and unwavering resilience. And as her memoir would later reveal, there were still many things about her life that she had chosen to keep hidden. Maureen O'Hara was more than just a Hollywood star, she was a warrior. She stood up for herself in an industry that thrived on silence and submission, proving that talent, strength, and integrity could outshine even the most powerful forces in Hollywood. Her legacy isn't just about the incredible films she made, it's about the battles she fought and the courage she showed. What do you think about Maureen O'Hara's story? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more untold Hollywood stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you.